as well as some of the new clauses that in our view are smuggled into...
Sorry for the interjection. I want to invite you to a cup of tea.
Thank you very much.
And also have been joined by a member, Honorable Yona Musinguzi, MP Ntunga Municipality.
To the law by the move while appeared before you. For the sake of democracy and good governance, the National Unity Platform opposes this amendment bill in its entirety, and we base our strong opposition to this proposed law on the following grounds and context. One, we believe that the bill violates the Constitution of Uganda and the established democratic principles. The bill in its current form unjustifiably discriminates against opposition parties and their members of parliament on grounds of their political opinion, which is prohibited by Article 21 of the Constitution of Uganda, which prohibits discrimination on grounds of political opinion, among others. And I can give examples. One, it discriminates against the leader of the opposition's business in parliament vis-a-vis the leader of the government's business in parliament. Article 1081 of the Constitution designates the Prime Minister as the leader of government business in parliament, while Article 82A(1) effectively designates the LoP as the leader of the opposition's business in parliament. To achieve this, the party in government appoints the Prime Minister, while Section 8(1) of the Administrative Parliament Act empowers the main opposition party to appoint or to elect the LoP. However, Clause 2 of the bill intends to introduce a discriminatory approach whereby the LoP would be elected by all MPs of the various opposition parties in parliament, yet there is no similar requirement for the Prime Minister to also be elected by those who subscribe to his or her political party. Furthermore, Clause 3 of the bill, which introduces additional grounds for removing the LoP from office, is discriminatory in the sense that these grounds would apply only to the leader of the opposition, but not to the leader of government business, who is the Prime Minister, yet the two play parallel roles. Providing for the removal of the LoP by resolution of all opposition members of parliament and not providing for the same for the leader of the government business is not only discriminatory, but would be a direct affront on the opposition. Number two, it discriminates against the chief opposition whip vis-a-vis the government chief whip. And Section 14(1) of the Administrative Parliament Act provides for the appointment of a government chief whip by the ruling party from among its members. Please note the word appoint, that's what it provides for. Section 15(1) of that same act provides for the appointment of the chief opposition whip by the opposition party having the most members of parliament on the opposition. However, Clause 3 of the additional amendments now introduces a discriminatory approach whereby the chief opposition whip, unlike his or her colleague on the government side, would be elected by members of the opposition, which would be discriminatory and wrong. Worse still, whereas the bill is being touted as a tool for increasing efficiency in the opposition, it proposes that the new role of the chief of opposition whip would be to ensure the attendance, participation in proceedings and voting in parliament by all members of opposition parties in parliament, contrary to the prevailing situation where each opposition party has its own whip. Effectively, that means that the logical reasoning would be that there should be one whip for all opposition parties, yet the ruling party will have its own whip, which is not shared with any other party. Number three, the proposed law undermines the autonomy of opposition political parties, thereby weakening constitutional checks and balances. The bill disregards Uganda's constitutional framework, which envisages a multi-party system where each political party retains the authority to manage its affairs. It specifically infringes on the right of the main opposition party to self-regulate and appoint its leadership in parliament. Yet, in nascent democracies like Uganda, each political party must retain the autonomy to select leaders who best represent its ideals and policy positions. By proposing provisions that allow multiple opposition parties to participate in the selection and removal of the LoP, the bill unconstitutionally attempts to circumvent the role and influence of the largest opposition party and usurp the will of the citizens who voted for it ahead of any other opposition party. And I think this point has been made, that under a multi-party dispensation, the Westminster system, the presumption is that there is a party in government and there is a party in opposition. The main party in opposition, therefore, effectively forms government in that sense. and that is why there is even a shadow cabinet and all those. This bill's provision. This would undermine the largest opposition party's ability to assert its role as a primary check on government authority within Parliament, as well as its ability to hold parliamentary and other government officials accountable. It would also compromise the LoP's role by enabling the ruling party to influence decisions through members who may be more sympathetic to the ruling party's interests. Secondly, there is a likelihood that opposition MPs may be bribed or compromised or unduly influenced by government to vote a LoP agreeable to the ruling party. We all are in Uganda. We are not from Mars, Honorable Chair, and we know what has been happening in this country. There have been several reports of MPs being compromised to pass controversial laws and proposals by the ruling party. We are concerned that even this time round, the ruling party may seek to compromise opposition MPs to vote certain candidates for LoP, whom the ruling party finds agreeable, which shouldn't be the case under a multi-party system. Honorable members, I invite you to consider Yala elections, for example, and you see it is strange that the largest opposition parties for long have not had chance to send representatives to Yala. You will recall that in 2016, the chairman of NRM, General Museveni, publicly said that there is good DP and bad DP in an attempt to influence the voting of members of parliament in that Yala election. And indeed, those who are considered good DP found themselves able to sail through under that arrangement. Not all MPs considered opposition actually oppose the government. That's also another point. It is misleading to suggest that members of parliament who did not come to parliament on the ticket of the ruling party are actually in opposition. In the case of NUP, for example, honorable members, in the case of NUP, consider the case of Honorable Twa Kagabo, Honorable Jimmy Rwanga, and others. Although these members came to parliament under the NUP ticket, they have been categorical, stating publicly that their current allegiance is to the NRM, to a point of attending NRM caucus meetings. Now, members, are these the people who would be expected to elect the leader of the opposition in parliament? Would these kinds of people be expected to objectively refrain from moving countless motions to remove the LoP on frivolous grounds? People who have already indicated, although they are seemingly on opposition, but their allegiance and interests are elsewhere. In this regard, therefore, Honorable Lumu seeks to hand over the opposition to the NRM or any other ruling party using this absurd proposal. Worse still, it would be absurd in the present context to assume that every political party that is not in power is actually in the opposition. What do you make of the Democratic Party, for example, or a section thereof, which currently has a cooperation agreement with the NRM? Or the UPC, which General Museveni recently said are very good allies to the NRM. Should a political party in cooperation with the ruling party participate in electing a leader of the opposition, whose cardinal role is to keep that same government in check, it would defeat basic logic. We also invite this committee to reflect on the reality that political parties in the opposition are not homogeneous. Although we are all branded opposition, currently we have distinct ideologies, policies, and approaches to different governance issues. You cannot suggest that opposition parties are homogeneous, therefore. Even though they may operate within the same political system, each opposition party represents a unique set of values and priorities. This diversity must be guarded when deciding the opposition leadership in parliament. Failure to do so would impose undue influence on the internal decision-making processes of the main opposition party, thereby hampering the multi-party system that the Constitution was deliberately designed to protect. Inadequate consultation, the manner in which the bill is being fast-tracked through the parliamentary processes, to the extent that its mover felt compelled to smuggle into it additional clauses that were not part of it at the first reading and at the time when he obtained the certificate of financial implications, has militated against sufficient consultation of all stakeholders. This is a violation of the constitutional requirement for participatory democracy in lawmaking, which renders the bill illegitimate and unconstitutional. Clearly, the leadership of Parliament, in our view, is giving this bill priority, despite the evident lack of preparation on the part of its mover, which raises disturbing questions about the true motives behind its presentation. Rejection of the bill by all major opposition parties. Mr. Chairman and members, honorable members, besides NUP, all other opposition parties that have appeared before this committee, including FDC, UPC and ANT, have rejected this bill. And in fact, if you follow media reports, even those parties which are allowed to be consulted on this matter, all rejected this law. This is a resounding vote of no confidence in the bill by the person by those who would have been the biggest beneficiaries and main stakeholders, strips the bill of legitimacy. I mean, if this bill was meant to help the current opposition, and the entire current opposition is saying no to this bill, the question this committee should ask itself, whose interests is Honorable Lumu trying to push by insisting on such a law? The Administration of Parliament Act already outlines procedures for the selection of the LoP. Any amendment to this process must align with existing legislative frameworks and respect the Constitution and the Act's intent to empower the leading opposition party in its oversight role, and indicate that this bill terribly contradicts. And number two, another broad reason, the timing and context of the amendment indicates bad faith. It is public knowledge, Honorable Chair and members, that the leadership of Parliament, the current leadership of Parliament, has engaged in a pattern of hostility and antagonism against the current LoP by creating and sustaining an environment that sidelines and marginalizes him in key parliamentary processes and decisions. And we give examples where the National Executive Committee designated Honorable Joel Senyonyi as LoP, and that by that designation he particularly became a member of the Parliamentary Commission. But we understand that Right Honorable Senyonyi has not been invited or allowed to attend any Parliamentary Commission meeting at the Parliament of Uganda ever since he was designated LoP. Now, these meetings by dint of Section 18(1) of the Administration at least once every 2 months. And from the time he became LoP, he has not been allowed to attend any. And so we ask ourselves about the timing. Why now? Why not before? Why? We think that there is bad faith certainly, and the current LoP is being targeted through this law. Besides being denied his right to attend meetings of Parliament's top administrative organ, the Parliamentary Commission, since his appointment as LoP, Right Honorable Senyonyi has also been denied the privilege of hiring trusted policy analysts and other key staff in his office, contrary to the practice that has been followed since the position was created in 2005. You all recall, honorable members, again citing bad faith, that where Right Honorable Senyonyi strongly opposed and led other MPs in boycotting the sitting in Gulu. To get back at him, on August 29th, parliamentary sitting chaired by the Speaker granted Honorable Lumu leave to introduce the instant bill, seeking to clip the LoP's wings in a manner that we are highlighting. This was despite the Speaker categorically stating that only matters exclusively related to northern Uganda would be discussed in Gulu. How was the introduction of this bill in any way related exclusively to northern Uganda? This committee must therefore not accompany the mover of this bill on a journey that was birthed and nursed with sinister intentions, bad faith, far from Article 79 of the Constitution, which enjoins Parliament to legislate for good governance. To further show the mover's ill intentions, the bill proposes that the LoP may be removed when he or she misbehaves. Now, members, who determines misbehavior? Who defines misbehavior? Where you say that if someone misbehaves, then the person should be removed. What is the standard of misbehavior? Who defines misbehavior? What standards will be followed? Well knowing that different individuals and parties may have different standards for misbehavior and indeed incompetence. We have some parties or individuals in this country who may see corruption as not bad behavior, but calling out corruption as bad behavior. So how do we determine what misbehavior amounts to? And we see that the mover is deliberate on putting such vague grounds so that it's very easy to remove the LoP whenever the members are influenced either way. In any case, like I highlighted earlier, under Article 108A of 4 of the Constitution, the Prime Minister who leads the government side can only lose his or her seat when he or she resigns or dies, or when the appointment is revoked by the President, or when he or she ceases to be a member of Parliament. There is no possibility of removing such a person by a resolution of the ruling party MPs on vague grounds such as misbehavior. And we strongly feel it's unfair to say that for the Prime Minister who leads the government side, there's no provision even for such a person to be removed otherwise except those grounds which are specifically stated in the Constitution. How can anyone suggest that the LoP, on the other hand, should be removed over flimsy grounds like that? Providing an avenue for arbitrary removal of the LoP would destabilize the opposition leadership in Parliament. The leader of the opposition would have to be constantly on tenterhooks, seeking to appease the MPs on both sides to avoid that instability and the possibility of removal. All this go to show the bad faith in which the proposal is made. The timing of this proposal, considering that we have had different LoPs in the past, makes clear the true intentions. We are convinced that the bill is intended to tame the LoP and significantly weaken that office. It is a continuation of what happened when Honorable Zake Francis was illegally pushed out of the Parliamentary Commission when he started asking uncomfortable questions. The unconstitutional manner in which he was pushed out was confirmed by the Constitutional Court of this country. In addition to the foregoing, several other clauses of the bill raise more questions than answers. For example, where is the logic in the main opposition party nominating the LoP, but thereafter this LoP is not required to consult the party that nominated him or her, as clause 4 of the bill proposes? What does the provision that two commissioners shouldn't be from the same party imply regarding the nomination? Because the mover, under those additional clauses, says that, there should be two commissioners from the opposition who should not come from the same party. And we are saying that that would be a recipe for disaster. Doesn't it deprive the main opposition party of the commission and the parliamentary commission, since the bill essentially means that all opposition parties are entitled to nominate candidates for the two commissioner positions that are being proposed? And that would create the Yala situation which we already alluded to above. Conducting elections among all opposition MPs and gaining broad approval for appointments will require substantial time, resources, and procedural challenges, thereby resulting in frequent deadlocks on key appointments. Similarly, the requirement for multi-party approval in the shadow cabinet's formation and committee leadership would slow down decision-making and create inefficiencies. This bureaucratic layering could hamper the opposition's ability to quickly respond to government policies. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Chair and members, the question that this committee should ask itself is, does this deepen multi-party democracy or not? That should be the overriding question. Does this bill, in the view of this committee and in the view of the mover or any other sensible Ugandan, presume that by providing, as he proposes, that would deepen multi-party democracy, or would seek to stifle it? We wish to emphasize, honorable members, that our strong opposition to this bill is not in any way premised on any intention to strengthen or maintain our stand in the opposition as NUP. In fact, Honorable Chair, the National Unity Platform works day and night to ensure that it takes power and builds a new Uganda. Our opposition to the bill is premised on our firm belief that even if NRM was to be the main opposition party, as we know it will be in opposition sometime, it should not be crippled in its operations by using very bad laws like the present proposal. We invite this committee to reject it in its entirety and ensure that we do not seek to further aid the breakdown of the rule of law. I thank you, Honorable Chair and members.
We will allow the whip, the chief opposition. We take on all the presentations at a go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Only 6 minutes.
Sincerely express my gratitude.
The document is quite voluminous. You'll have to...
No, it is the font.
The font.
Which is bigger than the usual.
Okay.
But it is very brief. Colleagues, I want to express my gratitude to you for extending an invitation to me to come and share my insights and thoughts about the Administration of Parliament Amendment Bill 2024, that is before the Honorable Committee. Honorable Chair and colleagues, as you are already aware, the Administration of Parliament Bill 2024 was tabled and read for the first time on the first of the month of democracy that we refer to. The position of leader of the opposition is officially described in an act called the Salary and Allowances of Leaders of or Chairman of the Council of State or the Speaker of the House of the People, as the case may be. Criteria for recognition. There are two conditions that need to be fulfilled to recognize a person as leader of the opposition, Mr. Chairman. One, a party should be numerically the biggest one in opposition to the government. Two, the party should have 10% representation in the House of the aggregated number of MPs in the House. In fact, in the Indian Parliament, the leader of the opposition in Lok Sabha incidentally, Mr. Chair and honorable members, means the lower house. The upper house in the Hindu language is called Rajya Sabha. Now, this one, the leader of the opposition in the lower house is considered as a shadow prime minister with a shadow cabinet ready to take over the administration if the government resigns or if the government is defeated on the floor of the House. What is the practice of choosing leaders in a multi-party political dispensation in Uganda? Mr. Chairman, every political party is independent of the other in terms of ideology, aspirations, and principles. It is on this basis that parties present their manifestos during elections, the premise on which electorates vote candidates or parties of their choice. Two, there are lots of consultations that go on in the background with various stakeholders before the final position of leaders is brought to the House for approval. A case in point, Mr. Chair and the colleagues, is the NRM cabinet that has a cocktail of political parties in its cabinet who are appointed solely by the president, whereas in the opposition, shadow cabinet is constituted from the entire opposition membership, irrespective of party affiliation, by the official opposition party in the spirit of consensus. Each political party is independent of the other ideologically, and now bundling them together for the sake of the election of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Chairman, would mean denying them their rights given under the Constitution, as per the article I have actually quoted, Article 29. And in fact, to emphasize this, every political party in the opposition has its own party whip for purposes of relaying its members to toe its party lines. Grounds for one to cease to hold office of leader of the opposition. One, as it stands, the Constitution, the 1995 Constitution of Uganda, as amended under Article 83, it stipulates grounds on which one ceases to be a member of Parliament. And these same grounds still apply to the removal of the leader of the opposition. Two, and also the rules of procedure stipulate details of what constitutes misconduct, and also how one can be dealt with. And therefore, having this as a justification for amendment of the Act is uncalled for. Section 6C of the Administration of Parliament Act 2006, as amended, has already settled the manner and the grounds for which one ceases to hold office as a leader of opposition. The official opposition derives its mandate from a general election as a first run-up. Hence, one cannot remove the power, authority, and the mandate that is earned, I emphasize the word earned, at a general election through a mere procedural amendment. Therefore, this particular clause, Mr. Chairman, in the bill is redundant and does not offer any remedy, and thus should be rejected. Status of the leader of the opposition. Section 6D of the Administration of Parliament Act 2006 accords the leader of the opposition the same status as a cabinet minister, and therefore stripping him or her of this status by subjecting him or her to an election and leaving out his or other counterparts in the ruling party who enjoy the same status would be absolutely discriminatory. Thus, this opinion should stay as it is, since passing it in this current form as proposed by the move of the bill would be counterproductive and would be discriminatory. Election of the chief opposition whip. Honorable Chair and the members, the bill proposes the election of the chief opposition whip by opposition parties represented in Parliament. The office of the chief opposition whip is a creation of Section 6I of the Administration of Parliament Act 2006, and rightly so, the same applies to government chief whip under Section 6H of the same Act. That means the Act enjoins government chief whip and chief opposition whip the same status, and hence an amendment should apply to this same an amendment to this same section, because both government chief whip and chief opposition whip are creatures of the same Act. Now, an amendment therefore should apply across board rather than doing it selectively. The proposal is discriminatory and violates the Bill of Rights given to us under Article 21 of the Constitution of our motherland, Uganda, which talks about equality and freedom from discrimination. And goes further, I've quoted, I will not read this, but goes further to say that we should all enjoy equal protection of the law. Appointment of the chairpersons and the vice chairpersons to parliamentary committees. This ascent to this position is through a consultative process that happens behind the scenes. No wonder some committees that are to be chaired by the government side are chaired by some MPs that don't belong to the ruling party. You all know this, it's crystal clear. Similarly, in the opposition, we have chairpersons of accountability committees that don't belong to the official opposition party, in the spirit of don't leave anyone behind, but rather move together as a team, which National Unity Platform has demonstrated by word and deed. In the light of the above, I pose the following question is respectively to the committee. Does this bill pass the following quality controls and standards? 1, the standard of multi-party political dispensation. 2, the Commonwealth standards, practices, norms, and traditions. 3, the governance standards, which are literally a principle of good governance. The amendment disregards internal party processes, weakening overall political party democracy. The proposal disempowers political parties by stripping them of control over their members in Parliament. If passed in its form, this bill, this legislation would kill multi-party democracy, as the leader of the opposition could not be answerable to any party, but to individual members of Parliament. Consultation is before the motion seeking leave was granted. Courts have held in Maremaviri's and Maremaviri's versus Attorney General and the Parliamentary Commission that before a private member seeks permission to present a private member's bill, he or she must conduct thorough stakeholder consultations. This particular bill before the committee is void of this standard, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, since there is no evidence to that effect that the mover held consultations before seeking leave to come up with this bill. In fact, it is on record that the Democratic Party that he belongs to was not consulted. Another important issue that this committee should interest itself in is what constitutes an opposition party. As it stands, there is a lot of ambiguity for that term. Ambiguity, for example, how would one describe or refer to political parties that have memorandums of understanding with the ruling party, and thus this shouldn't be lumped together as opposition to choose who the leader of opposition is. I have tried to peruse through and make a few consultations here and there, and I'm here to come across a country that elects the leader of the opposition. I'm on the last page, Mr. Chairman. In my opinion, it doesn't meet this bill does not meet any of the above standards, and thus borders the breach of the tenets of democracy and good governance, and is an insult to the Commonwealth's practice and norms. Finally, the issues being raised by the move of the bill are administrative rather than legal in nature, and thus there is nothing wrong with the current legal framework, and therefore the bill doesn't remedy anything. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman and members, it is my humble, considered opinion that the bill doesn't seek to cure any legal mischief in the existing law. I'm of the considered view that the status quo be maintained in the spirit of strengthening multi-party political dispensation, as was envisaged by the framers of our Constitution, and in keeping with the standards that I have highlighted above. Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee, I beseech you to reject this bill in its entirety. I beg to submit.
Thank you, Honorable Nambeshe. Should be rested. There is no speech, it's just taking its normal course. Yeah. And then I can now weigh in on the issues before I invite members. Now, under the current status quo, the Vice President, once appointed by the President, is approved by the House. Actually, the Vice President could be rejected by the House. If the name is brought for approval, the House could actually reject. Same with the Prime Minister. Goes through an approval by the House, which means that that name could be rejected. Now the ministers, once appointed, go through vetting by the Appointments Committee, which is bipartisan. We have members of all parties there, chaired by the Speaker, and the LoP is a member. Now you can see that all the officers appointed by the President, the biggest party in the government, which is in government, they go through some process of either vetting or approval by the House. Now the opposition, the leader of the opposition, who is designated by the party with the greatest numerical strength in the opposition, that party has a blank check. Has a blank check by way of just designating and informing the House. There is no requirement for the House to approve. The name is just brought for the information of the House that the leader of the opposition is so and so. So it is a blank check in my view. I want you to think on how can we cure the idea that it is a blank check. Maybe we need some processes through which that name could be approved or other than elections as proposed, which other way do you think would hold the party in opposition to accountability by way of either approval by the whole House or through vetting, as it is with the ministers that are appointed by the President? That's the first one. I'll invite the other colleagues to take on the matter.
The ministers vetting the government chief whip. I would want to ask the colleagues this side of the NUP people, how would you feel, or how would you take it to the same scrutiny of the appointments committee, like the chair has been proposing that the government people go through that process? How would it be compared to?
The LoP is not just a leader of the opposition for the party with the biggest numerical strength. It's a national office established by the Constitution. It serves all, the entire country. It's just not limited to NUP or FDC if we are the party with the biggest numerical strength. It's a national leader. Yes.
MPs can be bribed by government. How sure are you that your president may not be bribed by the same government? Because if you give him chance only to designate the leader of
meetings, I am very alive to the fact that certain officials who are permitted to cover parliamentary proceedings have been taken through certain training. So I want to appeal to a colleague who is doing the recording, live recording of our proceedings here. Kindly address yourself on those particular rules. Because if you read those rules, it talks about the angle, talks about the manner, professionalism. Those people know what is supposed to be for the public consumption and what is not supposed to be. So I want to request that.
Do I have a colleague who is recording?
Yes, on the violation of the Constitution. Chair, I'm alive to the fact that quite a host of authorities, Supreme Court decisions have been made, which have guided us on how we do the interpretation of the Constitution. I raised my concern particularly on the presentation which started on from page 1, on the issue of discrimination of the Secretary General, years of NUP, where it leads to the fact that there is discrimination. But interestingly, when he was making that presentation, he alluded to 3 articles of the Constitution. There was Article 21, where he made reference to political discrimination. Then he made reference to Article 82 and Article 108. Now the rule of harmony requires that the Constitution is interpreted as an integral whole. Whereas the allegation which is put forward is that the way the Prime Minister, for example, is put in office, the Prime Minister that's a constitutional office, and the mode of putting the Prime Minister is through an appointment. It is expressly stated in that provision. If you look at our Article 82, it gives the mode. Yes, it establishes the leader of opposition. That's crystal clear. But on the mode of us choosing the leader of opposition, that power is given to Parliament. I want to agree and look at the arguments which were subsequently raised, but I wouldn't really want to buy into the argument that by the mere fact that the Constitution provides one for appointment and that is discrimination. It is not. That is the provision. We follow the law the way it is. So I don't think it would be good for you to construe that as a total discrimination, because the mode is expressly stated in the Constitution. If the Constitution had so stated that even the Prime Minister should be elected, that should have been the process, isn't it? So that particular aspect, I want to appeal and make a submission that it doesn't augur well and say perhaps the ruling party is having that discrimination in the way things are done. That may not be proper. So the other concern that I have, when I look at your presentation, it is true you made reference to Article 81 of the Administration of Parliament, which empowers the main opposition party to appoint the LoP. But you also agree with me that the Constitution of Parliaments Act is the one which operationalizes Article 82 of that provision operationalizes Article 82 of the Constitution. I would perhaps bend so much in getting your argument on why you think that the mode of election may not be the most appropriate. You get it? As suggested by the mover of the bill. Because if you look at that, you carefully
I also fail to understand your concept of discrimination when Article 108A specifically provides for the manner of appointment and cessation of office for the office of the Prime Minister, compared to Article 82A, which gives Parliament the discretion to provide the manner for choosing the leader of opposition and how he seizes office. Two, the question of Article 82A, if you interpret it clearly, refers to a multi-party form of democracy and leader of opposition. Does not mention a leader of opposition political parties. So should we legislate beyond what the Constitution provides, which says the leader of opposition, and now we intend to legislate for other opposition political parties? What is the purpose of the Administration of Parliament Act as opposed to the purpose of the Political Parties and Organizations Act? Lastly, from me, you've noticed for other political parties and the effect it has on Article 93 of the Constitution, and actually the effect it has on discriminating other forms of shades of opinion in Parliament, including the UPDF and the independents.
By government and compromising them to elect a leader of opposition that is not the candidate of your choice. I'm a bit perplexed. Are you specifically alluding to the character of the current MPs in the National Unity Platform or generally? Because I find this a very serious allegation that, when put on record, compromises the integrity not only of the House generally, but especially the members of opposition, whom we have always held in high esteem and without any possibility of being bribed because they represent decorum. So when you put it categorically that that is one of the easiest and possible avenues, I feel they have been bundled up probably for wrong considerations. Secondly, the move of the bill had proposed on record here that it wishes the commencement date to be with the 12th Parliament. And you seem to suggest that the bill is targeting the current leader of opposition. Are you privy to the fact that he specifically and categorically stated that the commencement date should be 2026 with the 12th Parliament? Thank you.
You can share out the responses with you.
Responding to the concern you raised about the approval of the Vice President and the Prime Minister by the entire House, and that is it was buttressed by Council Nwagaba, Article 82A versus Article 108. Mr. Chairman, in the wisdom of the framers of the law, the Constitution, and even the enabling law, that Administration of Parliament Act, they knew the mantra which says the majority will always have their way and the minority will only stop at their say. In their wisdom, they realize that given the numerical strength of the ruling government, it would be just for formality to whip them. And by the way, the role of the government chief whip in Rule 15, sub-rule 2, apart from ensuring due attendance and the participation of members in the proceedings, the most important one is whipping members in voting for the position of the ruling party. Now, if it ever happened that you subjected this leader of the opposition who suffers from numerical strength, we are now looking at opposition, the number of members in opposition compared to the majority of the mass party. The members, the government chief whip definitely at any one given time can whip all his membership to vote out a given leader of the opposition. And that one, by the way, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, we are rivals, rivaling the two parties, the opposition and the ruling party, are rivals. One would not want a very smart, that official position to come up with a very smart leader of opposition who will give them sleepless nights. So they keep throwing your appointment, nomination is out every other time until you bring the one they know may not meet the threshold. So in the wisdom of the framers, they looked at the numbers, and the democracy is about numbers. That's why they saw that Prime Minister and Vice President are appointees of the ruling party, and there is no way they can turn against their own, because the caucus will be whipped in line to vote for them. But it would be a complete opposite if you subjected the same on these minorities. And that's why the framers, in their wisdom, did that. But also concluding, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, about Honorable Nwakaba's the addition, I think a clause was introduced, an additional one of more commissioners. That one is answered by Article 93. It would impose it automatically. And I don't think this would even qualify for a certificate of financial implications if it was going to impose a charge on the consolidated fund. And I think that's why it would not arise. Thank you very much.
Again, not agree with it, because not every senior leader in Parliament is subjected to vetting by the Appointments Committee, including the Speaker, the Chief Opposition Whip, the Government Whip and others. And the whole idea, really, and I think this is, you are talking about rules of interpretation. For me, I think one of the things that should guide this committee, honorable members, is the contextual interpretation, the context in which you operate. We are operating in Uganda, and we know the challenges that have affected our democracy and the challenges that we continue to grapple with as a country. So when, for example, I talk about the possibility of some members being compromised, it is, allegations have been there in the past that many processes, right from the amendment to remove the term limits, this is public knowledge that money exchanged hands. These things are in the public realm. So it is not something we are making up. We have talked about Yala, and we've seen all these allegations that keep coming up. So we are saying that in order to protect this nascent democracy that we're trying to build, let us not open a room through which evil will come to completely dismantle the little that the opposition is left with in this country.
The Secretary General said it is
They gave me the floor, if I may. They gave me the floor, if I may.
on his time.
Yeah, it will be quick. The history of Parliament has been clear. I will tell you that the 5 million bill to members of Parliament was known by everybody in the removal of term limits. Even in this very Parliament, there has been the 40 million.
that we had recognition of members of parliament were bribed with 40 million shillings pursuant to passing particular bills, and that was not only in public knowledge but also with evidence from members of parliament.
So what is the evidence? You said you are tabling it.
We have the evidence. If you want to table it, I can table testimonies of members of parliament once you give us time, but also we can be available for cross-examination of the speaker. And some returned the money, actually, to give you evidence more.
Conclude.
Thank you so much, Chair. So actually, like I said, it is public knowledge. You know, even this went up to the constitution, returned money, even about the age limit and all that, and that kind of thing. No, it went up to the court, actually. And if you read the decision of the late Justice Kakuru, he referenced that, and he spoke about members of parliament who returned the money about the age limit bill. So yes, indeed, that matter went up to there. So the point we are making is that once you say that we are opening up this process, now the leader of opposition should be elected. I mean, different interests. It may not even be the ruling party. By the way, let me say this. It could be other interests. It could be a multinational company which is interested in having a leader of the opposition that they can control, which will come in and try to influence the processes as it were. The other question I wanted to say, I think it's Honorable Yona who alluded to the fact that what if the president is compromised? First of all, the leader of the opposition is not selected in any way by the president, for example. It is NEC. We have a National Executive Committee, which is an organ of the party, which sits, deliberates, and elects a leader of the opposition. So that has to be very, very clear. Now, the other issue about discrimination, Honorable Nwagaba, I think really posed the question on discrimination, and I think one of the cardinal rules of interpretation again is you read the Constitution as a whole. Let's not just go the textualist way. Whereas the Constitution specifically provides for the appointment of the Prime Minister and not the leader of the opposition, our view is that once the law says one leads the government side in Parliament and another leads the opposition side in Parliament, then if you say that the mode of designation is different, there is discrimination in terms of the roles. You're already aware, indeed, the last time that the member was saying that it can, he proposed it as a by the way. He said, I have no problem. I watched that. He said, I have no problem for it commencing in the 12th Parliament. So the question we are looking at, what is the intention? Why now? Why in Guru? We are looking at all these circumstances surrounding this bill. So that's why we are saying that maybe the whole idea behind this bill was that the current LoP refused maybe to toe a certain line, and then this law came up. So we insist that we think it was brought definitely in bad faith, if not just to target the current LoP, to target NUP as a political entity. I've already alluded to what happened to Honorable Zake when we designated him as a parliamentary commissioner and all the problems that he went through. Comrade.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members of the Commission, especially regarding the question which was raised as to the vetting process that members of Cabinet go through. To emphasize that the spirit behind that is the whole idea of creating checks and balances to limit the powers of the head of state, which is different from the appointment of the leader of opposition, and additionally that the leader of opposition, unlike a vice president who can be picked from anywhere, is picked from amongst members of parliament, and he has already gone through the processes of establishing the minimum standards of appointment to this office. Yes, and further emphasize that the leader of government business and the leader of opposition are on assignment from their respective parties in accordance with the numerical strength as determined at the general elections. And therefore, to create a different mode of appointment for both in Parliament is what is the premise of our argument that the proposed amendment would be discriminatory against in respect to appointment of the leader of opposition using a different mode from the one of appointing the leader of government business. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair of this committee and the distinguished members and also the team. We have put our position as the National Unity Platform Party in writing. We have, through the Secretary General, elaborately submitted on those positions. In conclusion, the constitutional provisions in terms of power belonging to the people and also the voice of the people is very, very critical. The aspirations of the people of Uganda is very, very critical. It's therefore our considered view and our considered prayer that this committee accepts holistically our submission and therefore rejects the bill in its entirety and ensure as it would and as further breakdown of the rule of law. Because I was from Arua, many people even have not had, many, including people who are land. So when we are talking about the consultations, we really need to, I just came back from Arua yesterday. People don't know, and it is only called the Honorable Lumu Amendment. So, but who is the Honorable Lumu? What is the amendment? So it is really our prayer that in the best interest of peace and stability and democracy, let further consideration be done. But even without wasting any more time, let this bill be rejected in entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. The National Unity. NUP exit. The NUP exit. Colleagues, we don't have a break. We are connecting just straight. I wish now to take the opportunity to invite the NRM, the leader of the delegation will sit here, and the officials will follow. You are welcome, Mr. Secretary General.